feels like there's a next generation movement now within storage. Am I right? And what does that mean to you, if so?
So, I don't know if it's a next generation, but it's definitely addition of layers. So what we see that the market demands and what we are happy to provide is an additional software and analytic layers that provide a more mature level of control for storage. Yes, there's the basic level of hardware power conversion. Yes, on top of that, we needed and the market needed layering of maximization of self-consumption and the ability to optimize where the PV energy flows to the battery or to loads. On top of that, last year we've added home energy management because that's a more holistic way of managing your energy, not just looking about the battery, but also about loads. And now we see that the world of PV plus storage is moving to even utility control, virtual power planting. For sure, it's not the majority of solution, but it's definitely the trend. And that brings a lot of complexity. It brings more processing. It brings the need for cybersecurity in solar plus storage. It brings the need for systems to be able to share their status and pull together and dispatch together. It's very exciting technologically wise and financially wise.
A couple of years ago, you were saying, and there was a fairly clear understanding in the industry that economically the prices were still at the upper end of the trajectory. Now, obviously those prices have now fallen, but then with things like the introduction of the virtual power plant, it seems that on the other side there's more
the value stack.
Yeah, exactly. Can you maybe just talk about that for the benefit of...
Sure. So just to comment on pricing, we still don't see that the trajectory of price reduction is as we want, because it's kind of like in the early days of PV modules. There's not enough raw material like lithium and cobalt, so there's a lot of fluctuation in prices. But everybody understands that between phones and cars and stationary storage systems, the prices will go down. In terms of value stacking, yes, people now understand that there is more value in a solar plus storage system like this than just managing your home energy. If you're a utility company and you have multiple thousands of solar systems in an area, you can use them to defer investment in grid. You can use them to defer of buying expensive energy from fast-acting peakers and fast-acting power stations. You just need a technological solution for that. The utility cannot be expected to check the status of 10,000 systems, calculate and solve how much energy to take from each and one of them to keep the balance, and then dispatch them. You need layers of solution that give that to them. It's not deployed in mass scale, but we already see these solutions. We start to provide these solutions, and now there's a new value. The utility can now invest $20 million in beefing up the grid, or much less in storage plus PV plus some aggregation solution. So that's a value stack, and there are more on that relating to demand charges, relating to the gap between wholesale price and retail price. PV with storage is becoming one with the grid, and that is the evolution of PV.
Sure. The virtual power plant solution, you might have picked up that is something that I've been really excited about as an idea. And 3 or 4 years ago, it wasn't theoretical because it could be done, but it wasn't really at scales.
Right.
And it certainly wasn't being retailed as a solution, as far as I'm aware. Maybe in a couple of specific
Probably
markets.
not. Probably
but we've
not.
now already seen the SolarEdge VPP being deployed in the real world settings.
Right.
Do you maybe just want to talk us through, I think one of them was Australia with
Australia,
AGL,
yes, with AGL.
Do you maybe just talk us through, firstly, the sort of scale and scope of those projects, and then what benefits they're bringing economically, environmentally?
So I'll talk about the benefits, less about scale, because not everything is public information, but in terms of benefits, the main benefit that as a network operator you get from a virtual power plant is the ability to dispatch energy when the grid needs it. There's a shortage. Most of these shortages are either created from a fault or from the growth in demand, but then you have this shortage for a few hours a year in many cases. And it's like you don't want to build the road system for one very, very busy afternoon and in the rest you just invested a huge amount in infrastructure. With VPP and storage, you can defer investment. That's what's called a non-wire alternative.
Sure.
You can not only defer investment, but be better prepared for faults without actually deploying all the hard cost of fault-proof solutions. So that's the value in many of these projects. Other values we see with energy retailers. If you're an energy retailer, energy supplier that sells energy, the deal is that you sell to your customers at retail price and you buy electricity at the wholesale market. And if the wholesale market surges because there's an issue on the grid or there's just a shortage of energy, then you start losing money immediately. If you could, at that point, dispatch energy from all of your customers back into the grid, you could prevent buying some of the electricity on the wholesale market. You need to compensate them, you need to give them, but you can give them something that is between the surge in the wholesale price and the retail price, so you can hedge. You use a VPP to hedge against surges in wholesale prices. That's another solution that is becoming popular.
I mean, it's quite an interesting one because, you know, journalists like myself, we like to make comparisons across markets, and
right.
Perhaps we're not always accurate, and we're doing it in terms of making things.
No analogy is fully accurate.
But yeah, I mean, one thing I find interesting about that is that, you know, if you're looking at the US commercial and industrial storage market, it's the same thing in terms of the shared savings model.
Right.
So the utility or the grid operator and the end user can share the benefits and
right.
kind of meet somewhere in the middle, essentially.
Exactly.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And one doesn't replace the other. So you still need the maximization of self-consumption to make the basic numbers work. But if on that you can layer something, makes more financial for everyone. And I really believe that, you know, PV is growing very fast. The more you have, and not just PV, any type of distributed generation or distributed load. EVs are going to change the way the grid behaves.
Sure.
So a virtual power panel doesn't have to be where you dispatch storage from energy. You can dispatch storage from energy or throttle EV charging. It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
So the more you have distributed generation and distributed consumption, the more you need this type of solution. Otherwise, the growth of the industry will slow.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, what is sort of what's your approach on energy storage at other scales at the moment?
Oh, so the solution is actually agnostic to the size of the system. You can pull 1,000 small systems and one large system. There are different behaviors for this system. So when you solve and disaggregate and aggregate, you need to solve and disaggregate and aggregate different for the resources, but that's something that the VPP does. For the actual end user of like a utility, we aggregate the same, this and that. It's a busy show, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
So that's the three-phase solution that we have.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which is basically a three-phase 48-volt inverter for the residential three-phase market, and that's a low voltage. It supports low voltage batteries, so there's a little bit more interoperability between brands.
I mean, do you want to just talk us through, basically for the layman, the difference in the sorts of batteries that are supported between high and low voltage?
For the end user, you get the same type of system. It's DC coupled anyways, and it comes with all the benefits of consumption monitoring and maximization of self-consumption, and control from the app and visibility and the ability to use time of use rates and really lower your energy consumption and with that your bill.
Sure.
It's a technical difference. This system has a high voltage input, so you need high voltage batteries. And there are not a lot of these in the market.
Sure.
So you're a little bit more constricted with the vendors that you get a battery from, in this case LG. There are more batteries today on the market which are low voltage, so the three-phase inverter that we develop has the ability to work with low voltage batteries, and with that you get a little bit more of a battery agnostic solution.
Right, okay.
But that's, after the system is installed, they both work the same.
Sure.
You already have HD Wave, but
sure. And that's the really low weight one that
low weight,
about
very high
right?
efficiency, but to connect a battery to it, you need to buy a small box which is a storage interface. What we're showing here is an HD wave that is already integrated with the storage interface.
Sure.
That is coming soon. Actually, most of what we sell in Europe today is HD wave with storage interface. This will just replace that as one integrated inverter. And then now comes the three-phase 48-volt product, basically to have a full portfolio.
Sure. With our general theme being, what sort of education does the wider market still need? To my mind, if I say to you, energy storage is not a silver bullets are just for werewolves and fantasy land.
Right.
If we're being real about energy storage is...
Energy storage is a necessary part of the evolution of distributed generation. No matter what you say, distributed generation is always intermittent at some point, and you cannot do without reservoiring. The best analogy I find is our water system.
Okay.
Because imagine a world where you have to pull from the ground exactly the amount of water everybody is consuming in their faucets. Because if you push too much water into the pipe system, then pressure goes up, and if you don't push enough water into the pipe system, pressure goes down.
Yeah.
That's a very hard regime to manage. And now let's say that you even manage to balance that. Now people start to push rainwater into your water system. It would be impossible for you to stabilize the system. So the water system already solved that. We have reservoirs. We have reservoirs in our homes, we have reservoirs in our buildings, and we have large water reservoirs in our water system.
Sure.
The electrical grid is a water system. Today is a water system without reservoirs. Utilities need to manufacture exactly how much we consume. Storage is simply the next evolution. We need to add reservoirs to our water system. And the best place to have them is where we consume. But there will be reservoirs everywhere along the chain of electrical systems.
That's pretty good, I like that.
That's my analogy for you.
Excellent. All right, thanks very much, Lior.